Very few citizens are actively engaged in this, and there are a lot of elected officials, once they're elected, never hear from anybody but a lobbyist or people who want them to do something, some favor for them.
So with that, I want to bring up Amanda. They've got the technology switched over. I think most everybody in here knows Amanda, but just to be sure, let me pull up
Amanda.
Amanda Teegarden has worn a number of different hats. She's been a very active member in the Tulsa area politically for years and years. Some of the positions that she's had, I'm trying to find the bio that I have on you here, Amanda.
I'm alive.
Find it. She's alive, she's well, she's doing well. Amanda has run for state office. She has been the founder of different organizations that have fought for our rights. Oklahoma Safe, tell me again.
Okay, Safe.
Okay, Safe. She's, what's the other one that you work with? Well, she's very active with Tulsa 912.
Liberty Center of
Liberty
Tulsa.
Center of Tulsa. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Amanda. She has taught on the legislative process here in Oklahoma. She knows it better than our legislators do. They need to listen to her. And so let's sit and learn what she has to share with us tonight. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you very much. Brian, do I need this?
No, you don't need that.
Okay. Here, Lori.
Oh, that's right. That's the question one.
All right. Thank you very much and good evening. And thank you for being here on a Thursday night where there's a lot of competition tonight for meetings. And welcome from the Pacific Northwest, which is very beautiful. It's just the people are odd. Okay. They are. Can you hear? Now can you hear me?
No, that will not amplify you. It's just for the camera.
All right. I'll try to speak up. All right. I would argue a little bit with David is that your rights are inherent and you were born with them. And they come from God. And afterward came a constitution. And when there are infringements on your inherent rights, you have the right to stand. And you should. And as much as he was accolades about Bible scriptures, I also listened to Led Zeppelin, so don't get too worried about stuff. I did. Anyway. All right. Presentation today is called Citizen Involvement in the Legislative Process. And what this is, we focus on the state level because you have more impact and more chances of actually affecting state legislation here than you do in Washington, D.C. We're fortunate in the 1st District because we are represented by a good congressman, which is our second one in a row. We had Jim Bridenstine before. I want to back up a little bit here. I am not speaking as the 1st District Chairman tonight. I'm not a member of the Republican Party tonight. I am an individual exercising my free speech, which is inherent right. All right. During the time that I was actively lobbying the Oklahoma legislature, I learned how much I didn't know about the legislative process and developed this training course, and that's what we're going to be discussing tonight. And before you ever start advocating for or against a piece of legislation, you ought to understand what makes a good bill or a bad bill. How do you know what's the right side to take? And I like to go back to Frederick Bastiat's From the Law, and as a simple statement here is the purpose of law is the defense of life, liberty, and property. All right? So you have to keep that in mind. I think that's a better framework to say where is my beginning and what does this piece of legislation do? Is it defending those life, liberty, and property, including this property right here? This is your property. If it's an infringement on that, then it's a bad piece of legislation, even if it was written by a friend of yours. Okay, citizen involvement in the legislative process is what we're starting today, and we can start with a basic civics lesson, and that is in our Oklahoma legislature, we have a bicameral legislature. We have 101 House members, and they each serve 2 years. We have 48 state senators, and they serve 4 years. So every 2 years, you get to flip somebody from the House and half of the Senate. And then the next 2 years, you can flip somebody from the House and the other half of the Senate. It's even and odd on the Senate side. The House members represent roughly 40,000 people or so, and the Senate members represent about 80,000. Their districts are bigger. That session. This will be the 59th legislature, and it starts on February 6th, so they're already planning and issuing legislation. You probably have been getting notifications from Senator Nathan Dahm and from others. Legislation's already been introduced, and their committee assignments have already been made. But legislation starts to be written in December or even earlier before the session starts. It runs for 16 weeks and ends on the last Friday of May. And often people ask, is 16 weeks all they work? And I say that's all you want them to work, because they're doing things that are going to affect your life, liberty, and property and your pocketbooks. You don't want to give them more chances to affect that, okay? Each session is 2 sessions long. We started with a brand new set of House members, and so we started a new legislative session. We're in session 1. Next year in 2024 will be session 2, the second session. Bills can carry over from first to second session if it hasn't been addressed. So if your bill isn't heard this year, it's a possibility it could be heard next year if it's not killed in committee. And we'll go through that pretty soon. First thing I want you to do is take out your cell phones and put these phone numbers into your cell phones. There's a handout on the tables that gives you the contact information for the House switchboard, the Senate switchboard, and the governor's office. And you'll need all 3 of those numbers if you're going to be advocating for or against a piece of legislation. And those are all important, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. The House has a toll-free number, the Senate is long distance, and so is the governor's off. You will get people, real life people, when you're speaking to them. Always be courteous on the phone calls. On the switchboard, you call them and ask for your rep, or you ask for your rep. You would also then have individual reps' numbers in your phone as well, but it's easier if you're multitasking, is just keep calling the switchboard and let them put you through. Does that make sense?
You've given us their direct numbers on these sheets.
Yes, which they don't provide, so there you have it. Okay. All right. One of your homework assignments is when you go home and you set up your computers is to make the oklegislature.gov website one of your home pages. And if you don't know how to do that, use DuckDuckGo or Brave browser and figure it out to write that. So it's oklegislature.gov is the main website for the Oklahoma legislature. On this page, you'll be able to access all the information that you need in order to track a piece of legislation, whether it's from the House side or on the Senate side. And if you have it on your phones, you can go ahead and open it up right now. The House videos and anything having to do with the House is on this side of the blue screen. Things that have to do with the Senate sessions are on the right. If you click the home page, you'll get a drop-down menu here, which I'll show you in a minute. They'll take you to a dedicated House page, and there's one for a dedicated Senate page. The House members page is a lot easier to use, and the Senate thinks they're all princes is a more difficult, doesn't give you the information that you need on the Senate side, which is just like the pro tem. Okay. If you want to watch live on the House floor, if you see right there, you can watch the proceedings live while you're at home. Just know that when you are watching live, you've got a 4 or 5 second delay. So if you're wanting to advocate for a piece of legislation that is under discussion right now, you will have to get out ahead of it before the vote, because once they've called the vote, the bill's already been voted on because of that delay. But you can watch live on either House or Senate, including in the committee meetings. Okay, so you click Legislature tab right there. I encourage people, when you open up this website, sit down with a cup of coffee and click all of the buttons. Just click it all, and you're not going to break anything, and find out exactly what pages take you where, and work on it that way. So the top is you want to find your senators, you click on Senate members, House members, or find my legislators. That's where you put in your address. It'll take you to the OK Voter Poll portal, and you put in your address, and it'll pull up your House member, your Senate member, your congressional member, and all of the other districts that you vote in. Okay? This is the tab that most of you will be focusing in on if you're going to be following a piece of legislation. You click on legislation, and up comes a drop-down menu that you can see right there that says basic bill search, advanced bill search, track bills. If you want to be notified of a piece of legislation so you can track it, you can sign up for it, create an account, which I'll show you in a little bit, and they will send you an email notification on the movement of that bill through the legislative process. That's how a lot of lobbyists do it, so that it's not magic how they find out. They're actually notified the bill has moved to committee. The bill is now, is committee substitutes being considered right now. The bill has moved to general order. The bill has moved to the House for a floor vote. Those kind of things. So that tells you where it is, and you will get emails in your inbox from an entity called CR Automation. Hopefully it won't go to your spam folder, but that's the notification you asked for. So read it and it'll tell you where the bill is, and you'll know when to start making your phone calls. Okay? Track bills, if you want to find out on the tracking bills, the little tab to do so, it's a hyperlink at the bottom of the OK Legislature page. You click there, you create an account, and write your account number down, your login information down. I have like 67 logins, so make sure that you write yours down. Hopefully you're not using the same login for every single thing. And write that down and put that someplace safe so you can call up any piece of legislation that you'd like. How many people in here are familiar with OK2A in Oklahoma? Oklahoma Second Amendment Association and Oklahoma's for Health and Parental Rights. Two outstanding groups, statewide organizations that are doing some heavy lifting in order to protect your rights, or to protect the infringements on rights, the further infringements on rights. If you are so inclined to have a painful experience, you can read the Oklahoma Constitution. It's over 100 pages long. It's the longest in the United States, maybe anywhere, and it was written by progressives, lawyers that were driven out of the state of Texas. And they came up here and did the dirty deed in Oklahoma. So if you want to sit down and read that, go ahead and read it. OK2A has been working for years to push back against our bad Oklahoma Constitution, to restore our natural rights, what they call more constitutional rights, because of how our Oklahoma state constitution was written dealing with Second Amendment. All right, so that's what they've been doing. This year, they've changed over from text messaging to an app. How many people are aware of that? If you go to your app store and search OK2A, all caps, OK, and the number 2A, you should be able to find the new OK2A mobile app. Go ahead and download it onto your phone and set it up to receive push notifications. Now, if you do that, then you will be starting to receive the notifications from the Oklahoma Second Amendment Association. So those bills where they're asking you to take an action item that's on a bill, maybe for you to carry, concealed carry on the fairgrounds. That's one of the bills that's coming up. You want to know when to advocate for it, they'll let you know. They're an outstanding organization, and I really encourage you to support it if you're not. Oklahomans for Health and Parental Rights. If you go to their website, they'll tell you how to sign up for notifications from them. All right, this will be the hardest part of the whole presentation tonight, and that is to encourage you to actually call your elected official, your state rep or your state senator, invite them out for a cup of coffee. You can do that.
What is that thing?
My grandkids know what this is. I'll let my 4-year-old grandson tell you. I have one of these at home and they play with it. Anyway, those are great phones. Okay. So invite them out for a cup of coffee. And they will do that. It serves two purposes. One, you get to know who they are, and number two, they get to know who you are. And I would really encourage you, even if you're really irritated with them, to be polite, because in the future, you want to be able to call their office. And I always encourage people to be polite when you're interacting with folks and to do the cussing out in the parking lot. just try the best you can, especially in the Capitol since it's been remodeled. There are a lot of listening devices that were not there before, and more cameras, so don't do it. Inside the Capitol, go outside. Call, invite them. Now, I have new senator, we had redistricting, we all experienced some changes, and my new senator is Senator Dana Prieto, all right? So I've already met with Dana over the year, over several years, and so we're pretty much on the same page. And I will be more in touch with Dana. I have a progressive Democrat for a House rep, and during COVID, I reached out to, I think it was even 2020, reached out to invite her, have a cup of coffee with her, and she would not meet with me in person. She would have a digital meeting, and I said, that told me right there where she was, is buying into the lie. So and I said, well, I'd like to set up an appointment for a time to meet, and it just didn't work out because she didn't want to meet face-to-face, or didn't meet face-to-face. So you do what you can, but for the most part, you should be able to meet with them, buy your own coffee, meet at a coffee shop in a neutral location. You can bring somebody with you. I would encourage you to remember that they are just a human being that happened to get elected to office. They do not know every single thing that they're supposed to know, and you may know more than they do. And that's often the case. But you want to develop a relationship, and if you've not been engaged before, you can just start off with saying, I owe you an apology for not paying attention to what you do before, so my apologies, those days are over. Okay, all right, so we're going on. So we're already near this end. Identify your legislators. First off is identify who your rep is and your state senator. You have a lot more impact right there than you do in DC, because they have fewer people to deal with and you know where they live. Don't go do stuff there, but you do know where they live, and that means that you know their neighbors and you can talk. And just do that, and it would be amazed. Very few citizens are actively engaged in this, and there are a lot of elected officials, once they're elected, never hear from anybody but a lobbyist or people who want them to do something, some favor for them. So I would encourage, please do this. Add the contact information to your phone. The House and the Senate members do not show you, they used to, on their websites, they do not show you their actual email addresses. You have to use the House, the electronic version of it to send them an email. And it says, you send your message by their mail system. Their email addresses are firstname.lastname@okhouse.gov. Firstname.lastname@okhouse.gov. There's a printout that we created. I put that on there. I said, hide, and we'll put it out here. The Senate, firstname.lastname@oksenate.gov. So it's the same thing. Firstname.lastname@oksenate.gov. Put that information in there. There are handouts on your table that has all of their contact information, their phone numbers, and the room number at the Capitol.
Amanda?
Yes, sir.
I would recommend everybody download the OAEC app also on their phone.
Yes, that was the first bullet point on there.
Yeah, and that has all the phone numbers and all the emails in it already.
Isn't it an electrical cooperative?
Yeah, the Oklahoma Electric Cooperative.
Right.
Has all the emails, has all the phones, and I just hit the app and all that information comes up.
But not for all of them.
Everybody, state and.
The whole list?
Yes, ma'am.
Not one at a time.
Yeah, one at a time. That's one of the.
Well, you can also go the whole, see all, do the whole list.
I would do the whole list.
You can view the whole list.
Right.
It's a great resource, that's all.
It is a good resource. I don't use it, but it is a good research. Okay, so everybody in here going to meet for coffee?
It's a big one, Elizabeth.
Yes.
Yes, good. All right, leadership.
Here next to Mary Boren's name, is that her district number or IQ? I'm just trying to familiarize
All right.
myself with the use of the word.
We are now, all right, so leadership. The House and the Senate each are broken up into a structure to manage the legislation. right? And so there's a structure on the House side and a structure on the Senate side, and they each have leadership on that. So the leadership in this case, for the last time, once again, Senator Greg Trick or Treat was elected as the Senate pro tem. Like I said, I'm not here as a GOP member. He's on there. I think this will be his last. He's term limited out, and they reelected him. All right, that's a powerful position, and he has the ear of the governor. Yes?
Did you just say he was turned out and reelected again?
He is now term limited, and this is his last.
Okay.
Yes, he's got some more time. He's a politically ambitious man. Yes. Let me just say that. He's a very politically ambitious man. Anyway, so he is the Senate pro tem, and I think Kyle Hilbert is the vice president, vice pro tem. He has the ear of the governor. The Senate pro tem has the power of appointment of all the committees, the committee chairman. Now, I'll tell you how powerful that is, that Senator Nathan Dahm, who is a senior senator, and probably the best senator the state of Oklahoma has, got no committee chairman appointments, but the new guys, a couple of new guys did, and vice chairs. And why is that? It's because this is a petty individual. And by not doing that and actually making it more difficult for Senator Nathan Dahm's bills, which are always good, generally good, he's only been wrong once that I know of, are not going to be heard. He's undermining representation in Senate District, I think it's 35. 33, all right? So he's undermining it. And this is a petty individual for undermining representation in a Senate seat because of animosity with Senator Nathan Dahm. So we do not elect princes that are of superior of anything, is that we elect individual men who are susceptible to the lure of power. All right, so he has the power to appoint all of these majority floor leader, majority whips, and a whip is somebody that goes around and stirs up support for or against a piece of legislation, or goes around and makes sure that there are, gets the feel for a piece of legislation. He stirs up support for it. There's not actually a physical whip. And the caucus chairman is, the caucus is the member of all one party is called a caucus. So there's a Republican caucus and a Democrat caucus. The Republicans in the Senate are the majority party. There's only eight Democrat senators, so they're not going to get anything. Yeah. We'll debate that later. And then House members, it's same thing. Majority caucus is the Republican Party, and the minority caucus is the Democrat Party. All right, and they maintain party leadership. Leadership is on the speaker side. This is our Nancy Pelosi. This is Charles McCall, Representative Charles McCall, who's from the southern part of the state, and his family is in banking. And I'm sure that has nothing to do with any of the things that he's done. All right, so he also is the speaker, as the ear of the governor, who should not be involved in the legislative process, right? Yeah. Right? Why? We'll have a quiz, pop quiz. Why should the governor not be involved in the... That's right, separation of powers. How many branches of government are there?
They're not the three, I think three.
Well, yeah, three, and they're separate but equal, and they're not supposed to interfere, right? So as much as I like Governor Stitt has been down, walking the halls, advocating for or against a piece of legislation. All right, so he also has the appointment to appoint all these committee chairs. There are 101 House members, so there's more positions, because you have to spread it out, okay? Committees are elected by the members, are the Senate, the Speaker and the Pro Tem are elected by the caucus members. He has the power of appointment for leadership positions. That's all those committee positions that you saw there, and committee chairman, and maintains the party's position. We have to elect people that have enough strength of character and a backbone to be the one guy to say no. You have to always remember that when you're looking for character of who to support in a piece of to run for office, do they have the backbone to say no? Because the caucus members are going to apply pressure to go along. So remember, you have to have somebody who has a strong character. They try to control the outcome and controls bills advancing to the floor. So who the pro tem is and the Speaker of the House is very important because they control the final outcome. Leadership. When I was lobbying a lot, it was it was when Mary Fallin was the governor. How many people remember Mary Fallin? All right, Mary Fallin. When I would lobby, this is some of the some of the things good elected officials were told when they tried to advance a bill. Let's call it a liberty bill. And this is what they were told in order to be controlled. Is the governor thinks this is a good bill, right? This bill is really important to the Speaker, or this bill is really important to the pro tem. Okay, you'll get used to how things work around here. They usually try that with the new guys who are trying to question, why can't I get my bill heard, or why is it going off to the conference committee, or how come we're not getting the bills heard on the floor? You'll get used to how things work around here. Okay, we need to get this done. That's a threat. And this one is actually, I've talked to several people who have actually had this happen. You want your bills heard, right? That's what they've been told. You want your bills heard, you got to play the game. And if you don't do this, we won't hear your bills. Senator Joseph Silk, Senator Nathan Dahm, both were told these, and some House reps. All right, so this is a review of leadership. They're guided by the governor's office, which they shouldn't be, but they often are. They have the power of appointment, they apply pressure, and they control the legislative process. So does it matter who gets to be the pro tem and the Speaker? Yes, it does. And I would say that this is why Nancy Pelosi wielded so much power. Anyway, so lobbying. How many in here have ever made a phone call or advocated for or against a piece of legislation? Congratulations, you're a lobbyist. You have lobbied for or against a piece of legislation. You're not a paid person to do that. If you advocate for or against something at the legislature, you are lobbying for it. Not all lobbyists are bad guys. The ones that are paid, some of them are for offense and some of them are there for defense. Some of them are there to represent the corporate's interest in advance pieces of legislation that favor Pfizer or the banks or the credit card companies, or mostly it's pharmaceuticals. All right, so if you've lobbied, let's say you want to lobby in person. If you're OK2A, you want to go down there and lobby in person. Once the session starts, or 5G, you want to go lobby in person on RF if somebody's got a piece of legislation dealing with that. Or if you're a property rights person or a water rights person, or you want to do something with the VA, you want to go down there and lobby. You can make an appointment or you can drop in. You don't have to make an appointment. If you drop in, go late Monday. Your best luck is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because they start going home on Friday. If you get there first thing Monday, it's too bad because they're still traveling in from the weekend from all far reaches of the state. You got people coming in from the Panhandle. You got them coming from all parts of the state. They won't get there till noon, some of them. So don't go on Monday morning. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are your best days if you're going to do in-person lobbying, and just make sure whose office you're going to go to. If you do go in groups, you can go in by yourself or groups of 2 or 3. If you go in a group, pick one person to be the spokesperson. You know from listening to your kids, you can't hear 5 of them talking at the same time. Elect one person to speak for you and have a bulleted handout that is cogent, coherent, and accurate to accompany what your talking points are. They will not remember your friendly face, but if you give them some talking points, they might remember something. They're getting a lot of visitors, and you want to make sure that you stand out. Always be courteous while you're there, the best you can, because if you're going to represent OK2A or Oklahomans for Healthcare, Health and Parental Rights, or yourself, you want to make you don't want to harm the effort by being punching them in the face. I don't recommend punching them. Okay. Identify yourself in your organization, know why you're there, and explain briefly. Use bulleted handouts. Do not use multiple colors of fonts, big fonts, little fonts, etc. Make sure it's accurate, it's cogent. it addresses the bill or the subject you're talking about, and if it's well written enough and that elected official stands with you in support of your cause, he can use it as talking points on the floor. They don't come with talking points if you provide them good ones that are legitimate and give them sections of the bill that are bad on it, or the principled reason why a piece of legislation is bad, or if it's tied to something else. If you give them something factual, they look for that, and they can go to the floor, and then when it comes to debate for or against a piece of legislation, you've given them a tool. There's power in that, but your job is to make sure it's 100% accurate, cogent, and on point. Okay? So I learned that when I learned that the hard way. When I first started lobbying, we were fighting the Trans-Texas corridor, and that thing coming into the state of Oklahoma, a huge land grab, and I had every piece of legislation. I had the federal law, and I had the Texas law that allowed it to happen, and the evidence here of what was wrong with it, and the land grab and all that stuff. And session had already started, and I'm going in with this packet of documentation, proof, right? Here's the supporting documentation, and the session had already started. They're dealing with this many bills, all right? So I didn't know much. So I got there with this, and they said, okay, do you have it in bullet points? And at first I was like, this is really important. You want me to put it in bullet points? Yeah, put it in bullet points. You helped them. And they stood up, and we did what we could to stop the Trans-Texas corridor with bullet points. Okay, so you can do that, but you have to find somebody who understands. It was a land grab issue. It had non-compete clause on it, and all you had to do was waive your 11th Amendment right, which is the right to be sued. And it was like they didn't understand what it was. Everybody was saying, "Oh, it's a myth," or "It's not going to happen." Well, Texas was fighting it, very strenuously. It was a huge land grab, 10-lane highway. Anyway, all tolls, non-compete clauses, it was bad. So Senator Randy Brogdon, Representative Charles Key, and Representative John Wright helped kill that bill, helped kill that ahead of time. And Representative John Wright had 2 visitors from Inhofe's office pressuring him to hear that, because transportation, and he stood up to them. So that's what I mean. You have to elect somebody with a backbone who understands what's really going on in the real world. All right, use bulleted handouts. Get to know the legislative assistant. They are not the elected official, and if you send them a thank you card after you meet, they will put your calls through, they will find you documents, and they will help you. They're not the elected official, so just don't take it out on them. Always be courteous, and they will respond and get you what you need. So they're your friend. Send a thank you and keep in touch by email and phone. All right, if you write a letter, I don't know if anybody still reads the paper or anything, they might read the comments, but you can write letters to the editor. We still have the Tulsa Beacon. You know, praise God, we still have Susan Biggs is working really hard, so we still have a local newspaper. You can write to her and say for a letter to the editor in that Beacon. You can also do it in the Tulsa World. That's our progressive newspaper, and they may publish it. Yeah, and we had that, but also if there's an article that's online that's allowed comments, make sure you could write comments online on an article and state your case, send a bill and what the case is. Don't argue there, just give people a tool next door. Some of these these neighborhood sharing information, some of them are actually allowing some conservative talk on them. You put in there and say, give people a heads up. Talk at whatever. You can just talk in your network here about a piece of legislation. I object to. If you write an email to your elected official, and if you use your phone, you can send it to them and just say, please, I object to, would you please vote no, or would you please vote yes on a bill? All right, so what was it, Senate Bill 415?
Senate Bill 415.
All right, there's an example. Okay, if you are advocating for Senate Bill 415, this is a random number we're picking today, like that make sure that your message to that elected official can be read on one screen of his phone, right? You do not want him to have to scroll through his phone, right there, that he can read your whole message. And that would be what the bill number is and the name of the bill. He's got 1,000 bills, no kidding, 1,000 bills that might be, that they're considering on that. A lot of them will be known by a name. So you can give the number and it'll say AKA the VA rights bill, whatever it is, or the fairgrounds, carry on fairgrounds bill. If you do that, they'll know what bill you're talking about. And say, please vote yes on this bill, and you can sign your name, or vote no on what your objection is, one sentence or two, and you sign it. You sign your name and your phone number. If you are a constituent, put that you are a constituent. You can write to anybody and advocate with all of them. But if you are a constituent, write that you are a constituent because you represent 200 votes back home. All right? So make sure you do that. You can write to any of them, but if it's your senator or your rep, make sure you write constituent. All right? Everybody got that? Because you represent some power. Use your own words. Do not use those mass emails. Nobody reads those. And it's a data collections scheme anyway. Collect information on you. Sign your name, home phone number, home address, and phone number. All right, this is a review. If you're going to lobby, you can do it by phone, you can do it by email, and you can do it in person. If you go in person, you can go as an individual or groups of 2 or 3. Pick a spokesperson, have bulleted handouts that are helpful, so you give them a useful tool that they can use for debate for or against a piece of legislation. Put the write letters to the editor if you are so inclined, and keep those accurate as well, and put the capital contact information in there. All right, legislation, now we're getting to the meat of it. How much time we got? Oh, we're doing good. All right, legislation, all right, so here's the whole thing about legislation. Legislation can only do one of 3 things. Any bill they introduce, one of 3 things. It can create new law, it can amend existing law, or it can repeal law. That's my favorite one, is the repeal part. To your point, David, about whether we are free or have liberty, is no, we don't. There's an estimated. I asked one time how many laws are on the books. They couldn't even answer. By the way, all the brains are up on the 6th floor of the Capitol because that's where the staff is. So I asked that question, and the executive legislative assistant sent the question up, and email came back, do you mean civil or criminal? And I said, just any, the laws. And they said, well, we don't know. So I later found out at the time, and this is like 8 years ago, 50,000 laws in the books. God started with maybe 10 commandments here, and we're at 50,000 laws. So you're not free. And if you want to test it, try to do something. Try to do something. You can't plant stuff in your yard without a restriction in here. You can't paint your house a certain color without an HOA interfering with it. And those are little Soviets, by the way. There are certain things like that. Try driving, right? You have a right to travel. No, you got to have a driver's license by the state. So you don't have the liberties. And again, I would just tell you, try to do something. There's a rule, a regulation, or a fee associated with almost every action that we're engaged in right now. So fight whatever you can and make as many wins as you can, and the best you can while you're honoring God. Don't comply. Okay? All right, so it creates new law, amends existing law, or repeals law. And the term bill, as used, shall mean the bill. It's also called a measure or it's a piece of legislation. And that is something that is proposed legislation which, in order to become law, must pass through the legislative process. One of your handouts, if you flip it over, is the flow chart of the legislative process. Okay? All right.
An act can be a grouping of statutes that make up. There can be a group of several different numbers of statutes in an act.
Yeah. House bills. If the House, we have 2 chambers, 101 House members and 48 senators. If they introduce a bill in the House, it starts with the letter H. It'll be an HB for a House bill, House joint resolution, House concurrent resolution, or House resolutions. And I'll go over what those differences are. If it starts over in the Senate, it'll start with SB, Senate bill, Senate concurrent, Senate joint resolution, Senate concurrent resolution, or Senate resolutions. All right, HJR. The H tells you it started in the House. The JR stands for joint resolution. a joint resolution, both chambers have to pass it, and that will become a ballot initiative, okay? In the state of Oklahoma, we have 2 ways for an issue to become a subject on a statewide vote. One is this way, a joint resolution putting it to the vote of the people, and the other one is called an initiative petition, which this state has engaged in a couple of times over the years, one of which was the personhood amendment, and we had one that's SOS, Save Our State, and we passed medicinal marijuana, the pot bill. Anyway, so that passed by initiative petition. Huh?
We attempted to fight the tax hike with an initiative petition.
Yeah, yes. And so you'll see people with the language of the petition and on clipboards standing around places, you support this, then we have a signature, and they have to have legitimate Oklahoma residents' signatures, all right? And they gather a certain number of names, and they present that to the Secretary of State, and they either approve it or deny it, okay? There's sometimes shenanigans with it on either side. Anyway, so that's what that is. A concurrent resolution is between the 2 chambers. They both have a resolution, and it has to do with in-house work. It's not anything that's going to affect the general public. It's a concurrent resolution within the 2, all right? And a resolution is a simple statement out of that particular chamber. And that could be that the House finds that Brahms vanilla ice cream is the best ice cream, okay? Whatever. It could be, you know, whatever it is. And that's how we get simple resolutions. They have they are not full force and effective law. The only one that is full force and effective law are the bills and the joint resolutions if they pass, okay? Everybody clear on that? There's different types. All right, this is an example of a new law. Remember, we create new law, amend existing law, or repeal. This is the new law, and each bill has the same structure. You have at the very beginning a compressed, like a run-on sentence paragraph there that is the title of the bill that tells you the subject matter of the bill, and the intent is in that bill, all right? And it'll mention all the things that it attempts to do. That's called the title of the bill. That is on every single bill, and no bill can become law without a title on it. So there's the title, and then this section here then begins the language of the new law. And where it says new law, all in caps, that tells you this is new language, and you will have to read every single word to understand, to know what they're introducing into the Oklahoma state statutes, what they're hoping to introduce. So if it says new law, you'll have to read every single thing, and it'll tell you what title it is. Title 70, so this has to do with schools. And Senate Bill 95 has to do, right now, this is an active bill from the 2023 session. This is a bill by Senator Rob Standridge, an act relating to schools, prohibiting public school districts, public charter schools, and employees thereof from providing certain material to a student without certain written consent. Basically, is you can't have sexually explicit material given to a kid. Now, it's kind of like what Adam Jones was talking about. It's hardly believable you have to say this in today's age, but that's where we are. They've been pushing the bad books, the graphic novels, for a long time and tried to normalize it, and it's reprehensible. So this is some pushback to make it that you at least have to have parental consent to do that. It's a pretty fallen world. Okay. So that's that bill. Senate Bill, House Bill 1021 is an example of an amendatory bill. Now this one is by Representative Jim Olson, and his title of the bill has to do with firearms. So this is an amendatory bill, so it's amending Title 21 of the Oklahoma statutes. 21 OS or 70 OS tells you the Oklahoma statutes it's amending. And amendatory means that you start to read all the underlined or stricken words, all right? So the amendment is existing title of law, and we're just changing parts of it. We're striking some and adding new. So that's what you're going to do. And this one actually has to do with allowing people to carry their concealed on fairgrounds, which would be the Oklahoma State Fair and the Tulsa Fair. because right now there's a problem on that. Okay, so the underlined words, they're striking some words up here, the prohibitions and other things, and adding new language right here, and this is the part that's new, that they have to agree to pass. And provided shall not apply to and specifically exclude events held on the fairgrounds and in buildings of the fairgrounds that are open to the general public during the Oklahoma State Fair and the Tulsa State Fair. All right, so everybody understand? You read the strike-throughs is the change, and the new language is underlined. When I first started doing this, I started reading the whole bill. They were, because I didn't understand the amendment, and I started reading it, and I was getting mad that the first part had passed. And it's like, when you start reading this stuff, you just can't believe anybody in their right mind passed it to begin with. All right, this is an example of a repealer. There were not too many filed by the time I was preparing this presentation for 2023. There may be more now, but a repealer is a simple statement. It says what section of a title of the Oklahoma state statutes it is eliminating. It's repealing, meaning pulling back. And to find it, you would actually have to go to Title 20, Section 127 of Title 20, Section 127 of Title 20 to go find out what it is. And this one has to do with, it eliminated the judicial and district attorney redistricting task force. Now, why won't we need that anymore? This was last year, because redistricting is done. All right, so they created a task force, so this is repealing the task force. Does that make sense? Okay, House resources. If you click on the oklegislature.gov website and the drop-down menu on home, go to the House Legislature's own page, and you want to find all kinds of information that you can use so you can learn more, become a student of the whole legislative process. This is where you go to find the resources. All right, go right to the horse's mouth. You click on the House of Representatives website, that's what this is, and you click the tab right up there that says resources, and it gets you all kinds of stuff. It gets you how to read legislation, the language used in legislation, how to research old past legislation. It's a tool that's there for the public to use, but hardly anybody knows about it. So this is what you can do on this page, and you click on I just clicked the resource tabs. House publications, those are all the journals. You can read the journals if you want to of past. We've only been a state since 1907, so we have fewer House journals. There's a journal that's produced after every session. It's sometimes 1 volume, we're up to 2 volumes now. Per journal, the fiscal documents, if you want to see the state's budgets, and the planning documents, the House journals, those House journals, rules, joint rules and House precedents. That's good to know because at the beginning of every session, the House and the Senate adopt new rules for that legislature, for that term. So there are House rules governing their behavior and the order of business that's passed at the beginning. That's the first thing they'll do is pass the rules in the House and the Senate, okay? That will help you so you'll understand when you're watching online what they are actually doing, okay? Maps, et cetera, research, publications, there's all kinds of things that are in there that are helpful, so that's a good tool. The handout that I gave you is the legislative flow chart. We have, in what's left of our representative republic, we have a checks and balances. A piece of legislation can't just be introduced, passed into law, and the governor signs it, okay? It has to go through a process. Both chambers have to hear the bill, and it have to agree in all the verbiage before it can become law. In order to make that happen, the bills that are heard, that are originated in the House, go through a process in the House. That includes the first and second reading, general order, heard on the floor, and advanced to passed out of the House before it ever gets to the Senate. The Senate side is doing exactly the same thing. Those bills that are introduced in the Senate side have to go through a process of being introduced, second reading, assigned to the committees. The committee hears about it, they advance it to the floor votes on it, it becomes engrossed, they swap. there's a deadline for them to meet in order to hit that swapping part, and it's generally in March. So they have a set amount of number of weeks in order to hear the bills that are each introduced in each chamber before they have to swap chambers, and each chamber goes through the same process again of committee appointment, committee assignment, committee hearing, advancing to the floor, and being voted on. And this is how you do this. If you want to kill a bill, you start poisoning the well now. The bills are introduced, you start reading, skimming through them, and I'll show you how you do that. If you find a bad bill, you can share it with your friends and say, this is really a bad idea. And what I call it poisoning the well is you start making calls now to those elected officials and say, this is a really bad bill, and I hope you do not support it when it comes to a committee. All right? And you do that because it's stripping me of my rights, or it's an infringement on this, or it's raising taxes, or it's another fee, we can't afford it. Whatever your argument is, hopefully you're all looking at it from a protect your rights position here. If it's a bad bill, you can poison it before they ever start so the guys don't want to be associated with it. And that's happened before. You've killed it before the session starts. That's the easiest one to do, poison the well. You can also, on the flip side, drum up support for a bill. So a lot of guys now, we're hearing support for this bill. It'll be a popular bill. I better put my name on it or I better hear it. It works both ways. Defense is poison the well and stop the bill. Offense is this is a good bill, let's hear it. You drum up support. You can start working now on these things. Okay, once it's introduced, let's say session has started, the bills are introduced, they've been given numbers, they're assigned the numbers in the order of filing. There's no magic to it. So the first guy on the House side filing a bill, his bill will be HB 1001. They have 4 numbers. On the Senate side, it'll be Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 2, Senate Bill 3, and it's the order of filing. It's not a ranking. And so they do that so that first reading, it's like, imagine a deck of cards. All the cards are here, and I'm going to divvy them out now to all of the committees, okay? So now they're distributed to the committees. That's literally the first reading. It's distributed. They're not actually reading it. It's a distribution to the committees. The committees receive it, and this begins this process, second reading and committee referral. If you want to advocate for or against a bill, you start calling at that point to the committee members to advocate for or against the bill, because you're only having to contact 10 or 12 people. And it's a whole lot easier to start advocating for a bill that you want to get to the floor when it's 10 or 12 people, start drumming up support them. Or if you want to kill a bad bill while it's in committee, you didn't stop it before, now it's in committee, you're only going to call 10 or 12 people and kill it in committee. If a committee kills a bill, it won't be heard for 2 years. Just their power, all right? So make group emails of the members of the committee. The Public Safety Committee is where the Second Amendment bills are going to go. The Education Committee members get all those emails together, make a group email on there, and send one email to yourself and blind carbon copy it to the other 12 members. You send, dear Senator, dear Rep, please support, please oppose. Whatever you want to do, you're sending one email at one time, but blind carbon copy it. All right? You're going to make a group email list of all 101 House members and all 48 senators for when the bill gets to the floor. And then again, you're going to repeat the same process. Send the email to yourself, blind carbon copy it to all 101 House members. State your case, dear representative, please, I ask you to support or oppose this piece of legislation. You can use the section and the line number of the bill that you oppose and the reasons why, and sign your name. You've sent one email to 100 people. But remember, it blind carbon copy. So this is the best time to advocate to kill a bill or advance a bill or advocate for a bill, okay? What happens in those committee members, these are the pro tem assigned these, and the Greg Treat or Nancy Pelosi assigned these guys, right? So these are their options for votes. Once a bill is in committee, these are the options for a vote. It can be passed, do pass. It's introduced and they don't make any changes. It's do pass and bingo, it goes to the floor leader for now the engine's running. It's just waiting to be heard on the floor, okay? So then you can do pass with an amendment. A committee can amend it. That means make a change. Change a paragraph, accept an amendment, or remove some language. That's an amendment. And the author of the bill has to agree to it. And the committee then would vote on the amended version of the bill, and then it passes out, okay? It can do pass with a committee substitute, which means it would still be Senate Bill 95. They take out that language, they put in new language, it still has Senate Bill 95, and 95, who maybe has a reputation as being a good bill, now has different language in it, and then they pass it on. That has happened. You got to watch it, because if it's committee substitute, go see what they changed, because it could be substantially different. Then it also goes, the bill is sent to the floor for a vote. If the committee kills the bill, it cannot be heard again for the rest of that session or the next one, because remember there's 2-year terms. You have to wait 2 years. Okay? So this is why it's important. If you've got to stop a bad bill, this buys you time. Stop it here. Okay? Anybody have any questions on that? Yes, sir. I was.
Nancy Pelosi's door in California, 8th District.
There you go. I would suggest that's a question, would put you in touch with Don Spencer, OK2A, and see, he would have more insight as to whether that would apply here, whether it's been used as an argument.
That was a silly question. I was just
No, it isn't. I mean.
It's the best speech I've ever heard on legislative process ever.
Oh, it is?
You're doing really good. I've never, been so interested in this before until now.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. All right, so this is when you make calls, is again, when it's in the committee, because you have fewer, oh, I'm sorry.
I may have answered it, but the do pass as committee substitute, there's still time for us to contact
Yes.
and make changes or request changes.
Once they vote on it, it's done with the committee. And then once they vote on it in any of these conditions, right here, in any of these types, do pass just as it was. It's very rare for a bill that's introduced to not have some modification on language. It's very rare that it's right the first time. It's likely if it passes out of committee with no changes, then the House floor will probably make changes. So at some point, it's kind of rare to have it. But if do pass with an amendment, read what the amendment was. It might have been fixing a bill. And do pass with committee substitute, the bill is sent to the floor. Once this vote is done, it's done in the committee. So was that your question? It has to go to the floor for the next.
You can still lobby, but you.
Yes.
Then the lobby is to all the members of the.
Yes. Yeah. Especially if a bad bill gets out of committee, you have to go to the floor. If your good bill gets out of committee, you're still going to be advocating with all 101 House members. You understand? Here's your chance to deal with few people versus the whole, before you have to deal with everybody. Okay, if a bad bill gets stopped, you can go, whew, okay, then you can focus on the other ones. Okay, and the committees are when you make the calls. All right. It is easier, this is just a summary again, just to kind of go over. It's easier to advocate for or against a piece of legislation when it's in committee before it gets to a floor for a vote, just because you're dealing with fewer people, and you can kill a bad bill. Okay, call and email the committee members when the bill is in committee. By the way, some of these committees are videoed, so you can watch the proceedings live. They're very interesting to watch. So just know that you've got about a 5-second delay. So if your guy is on the committee and you want him to vote a certain way, you got to get out ahead of the vote, okay? But you can, you'll know that the bill's in committee because you had your legislative notification sent to you by email, because you already know. All right, so call and email the committees when it's in there, the committee members when it's in there, and make group lists. Do the group thing, just send a draft, I have it on, I made a Word document and I put all the House committee members, just bulked them right there. Education Committee, Transportation Committee, and the Public Safety Committee, right? So you just cut and paste, stick it over. All right, so there's that. I had a thought and I lost it here. Okay, tracking legislation. You've now created an account where you're going to track a piece of legislation and you're getting email notifications. You've created your tracking list. So let's say this is it. Okay, you hit track bills. This is the next page that comes up, and you're going to, you've created an account. And so this is your account page appears, and you're going to tell them whether it's a House bill, drop it down, or a Senate bill. Okay, House bill, and then you put the bill number in here, and this goes all the way down here with the checks of the options of the stages of the bill you want notification of. All right, it goes through a lot of stages. If you click all of them, you're going to get tons of emails. So I would suggest don't do committee actions, because that's every single thing that they did. I would put referred to committee to make sure you know where your bill has gone. Scheduled on the committee calendar is important so that you know when to start making your phone calls for or against the piece of legislation. Scheduled on committee hearing, that's the one you want to watch. Make sure that your guy knows which way you want them to vote, etc. You save the settings for this measure, all right? I'm saving, these are all the notifications I want on House Bill 1021, which from our slide was the amendatory bill. That's the guns on the fairgrounds. Okay, so save the measures and my tracking list. Okay, so let's say you put in 4 or 5 bills you're interested in, you save all these measures, you save each one, and say, okay, which ones am I tracking? You click the tracking list, and up will come all the bills that you're tracking. And you'll be getting an email on each one of them as they go through the legislative process. So, and then of course you can log out, okay? For instance, this is House Bill 1021. If I just went on legislation and you call a basic search and put in House Bill 1021, up would come this dedicated page to that bill. This dedicated page of this bill tells you every single thing about this bill, from its history all the way to the co-authors and all of the votes. All of the versions of it, it goes through different versions: introduced, amended, floor version, engrossed, etc. One of the handouts there tells you all of the versions of a bill. They all have a definition, and you have to understand where your bill is in the process to know what version they're discussing. So make sure when you're advocating for or against a bill, you're actually talking about the same language where the bill is. Amendments, those are all the amendments, and the bill summaries. If you want just a general understanding what the bill is about, click bill summaries and you'll get a couple of paragraphs right there in general, what the bill is about in general. That's a shortcut way of finding out what it is versus reading it. I would encourage you still read the bill if you can. First reading, again, first reading is what? They've received the piece of legislation from the legislator and it's been given a number. Second reading is distributed to the committees, okay, like a deck of cards. All right, so it's still in the House, and those are the 2 days that was introduced. And if you're doing a basic bill search anyway, and you say, hey, I want to track this one, you click right here and you can sign up to receive notifications that way. So there's a couple of ways to receive notifications. Okay, so that's House Bill 1021. So, class, what's the 3 things a piece of legislation can do? Create new law, amend a law, or repeal law. Which one's our favorite? Repeal. Let's take those things away. All right. All bills are assigned to a committee, follow the legislative process. They follow that flow chart. You know, that's our checks and balances. It cannot be easy to make law. It has to go through a process. And the committee chairman controls the legislation. All right. This is your second home page. Wow, okay, we're on the second home page. I know, this is like, put your jammies on time, right? Okay, this is second home page right here. So it's the Oklahoma State's Court Network. And why do you need this? Because this is where the statutes go once they pass them. And this is when you look up to also do legal research to see if your daughter's boyfriend has an arrest record. Okay, this is where you find court cases and all this kind of stuff. This is oscn.net. You don't have to put in the version 4. This website is so user-friendly. This was developed in Oklahoma by Oklahomans, and it's so user-friendly and so well done that this has gotten national recognition. If you go to, which is weird, right? But it's a good thing of Oklahoma, is this is an easy page to use. There was talk a couple years back, you know, to change it. I'm glad they didn't. I've done search on statutes in other states. Ours is way easier, way easier. Anyway, you click the little tab that says legal research, and this page comes up, and these are all the things that you can find out. And it goes way down: Supreme Court decisions, Oklahoma Supreme Court, civil courts, etc. But you want to click right here, Oklahoma statutes citationized, where they are listed in numerical order and cited, and they're listed by year the legislation was passed. So if you want to find out the statute citationized, well, the session laws is by year. Statute citationized means there are 85 titles of law in the state of Oklahoma. Every bill that's introduced has to deals with one of the 85 titles of law. It's alphabetical. It starts with Title I, which is abstract, which hardly anything happens there, all the way down to W, which is workers' compensation. Alphabetical, all right, in there. So those are the statutes citationized, okay? So if you click on that, there are 85 titles of law listed in numerical, alphabetical order, titles of law that have frequent flyer miles on them, and that's what I call the bills that they tinker with the most, are Title 10, which has to do with children, Title 70, which has to do with schools, Title 47 is motor vehicles. That's a huge statute, title of law. Motor vehicles, because you affect people's right to travel, there's trucking, there's all kinds of stuff in there. Public safety, 68 revenue and taxation. Do I have time to tell my revenue and taxation story? Sure. Okay. When I was lobbying, I was in a legislative assistant's office, a rep's office, and I needed one section of Title 68 printed out. So a very nice lady said, okay, I'll print that for you, right? So she printed it out and sent it to a shared printer, right, on the house side. Shared printer. She goes over there. She accidentally sent a print command to print the entire Title 68. And it was 2 reams of paper. So that's Title 68, and that's your pocketbooks. That's your revenue and taxation. So that's probably, I don't know if it is the longest title of law, but it's huge. And I saved that box. So actually, I do have documents in the garage that, and at work, in boxes. Okay, so just know that, I mean, it's huge. Like, there's estimated 50,000 laws on the books. If you print them out, we could fill, it's a lot of paper. Okay. On the oscn.net website, you can find all of these things, including jury instructions, court rules, fee and bond schedules. Might be important to somebody. The Oklahoma Constitution, the gentleman from Washington may want to read that. Maybe not. And all these other things that are there. So it's a very helpful website to have. The committees, there's 22 committees on the House side standing committees. Those are committees that exist every year. And conference committees, a conference committee is, used to be done in secret in the hallways, but now it is. The conference committee is, let's say they strike the title of a bill so they can work on the language. Everybody gets on the conference committee and they start working on it to tweak it, and everybody agrees to it, and then they restore title and send it back to the floor, okay? Conference committee is an opportunity either to do shenanigans or clean up a bill. And joint committee, and you can get committee notices if you send an email to your legislative assistant, your legislator, and say, I want to receive all the committee notices. They'll send you an email when the committee meeting is coming and what the bills are that they're going to hear. And I get a lot of those.
Amanda, since you mentioned in passing,
Pardon me.
Why don't you explain to them what happened, why they strike title, what the status of bill is when the title is stricken, while it's stricken?
The striking title is a legislative maneuver process. It's legitimate. Remember at the beginning I said no piece of legislation can become law without its title. So they strike the title, take it off, so that kind of cripples the bill, but it allows them in a joint session to come to an agreement what the language really is. It's an opportunity for them to work on it collectively. It's not on a schedule, it's not on anything else. It has a deadline on it. They do have to hear it. But then if they come to an agreement, they can do what's restore. There's a process called to restore the title, and then the originating house has to pass it, and then it passes. But no bill can become a law without the title on it. And so striking title is a way of working jointly on a bill. Does that make sense? Okay. And I think, oh, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Any other questions?
Yes.
Early on, you explained the roles of the Speaker of the House and the President pro tem of the Senate. Would you explain to folks the meaning of the title of the Senate President pro tem, and explain who the actual President of the Senate is and what powers he has in the Senate, and how we have a bad history of our Senate presidents actually using their power for good when they can.
Are you referring to the Lieutenant Governor being the President?
Yeah. And what
Okay.
he can do, let's say, for example, tell him what he can do. If you got a good bill that's in general order, it could come up for a vote on the floor, but the President pro tem, Greg Treat, refuses to let it have a bill on the floor. What can the President of the Senate do?
Well, I think you kind of imply what the answer is. If there's generally, it's actually never happened from what I understand, but the Lieutenant Governor, we have 48 state senators. If it's a tie, the Lieutenant Governor can come in and cast the deciding vote. If the pro tem is absent, the Lieutenant Governor can serve as the Senate pro tem.
Well, the President pro tem, the name of his title is, he's acting in the place of the President. He's the one acting in the place of the President. The implication is the President's not there, so he's acting in the place of the President. But the President of the Senate can come in and call up a vote out of general, can walk up to and take the gavel at any time and call any vote up from general order, call it for a vote on the floor right now.
Sounds like the suggestion is then
That would
to
be a very
strong-arm
dramatic
Canal.
moment, and I think it would be cool, and we'll see it, but it hasn't happened.
That was, in my opinion, Mary Fallon's finest hour. That's why Oklahoma has right to work. That's when Oklahoma became a right to work state. That bill was never going to get to the floor, that Democrat. And she came up and demanded it comes for a vote on the floor. And then we had a Democrat-controlled Senate, but on that bill, it was very close on the votes, and she called the vote, and it passed.
Any other questions for Amanda before we wrap it up tonight?
Any more?
Has this been constructive and helpful to you? Yeah, give her
You're
a big
good-
round of
you're a
applause.
good
This is
audience.
wonderful information.